compares me to Christians. Why do you believe this? I'm not saying why. I'm asking them, why are you convinced by this? Why do you accept this? This is the question I'm asking. Yeah? Why? And I want reasons for it. Then you can ask me, why do you believe the Quran is the word of God? Why do you believe Islam is the only religion? You can ask me these things. And I'll give them a reason. Because there has to be a reason. So I say in the same breath, if an atheist wants to walk around claiming God doesn't exist, he needs reason.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't say because babies get cancer. This is reason. No. The question then becomes, why does God allow babies to get cancer? Could be. It doesn't mean just because babies get cancer, God doesn't exist. Creation doesn't exist. The universe created itself. Yeah?
There are accounts from theists.
They need to learn this.
I think some atheists will adopt the dogmatic assertion, perhaps from a sort of rhetorical angle. For example, Dawkins, who is recognised as being one of the four horsemen of the atheist movement. In one of his books, he says, no, I'm not 100% certain. He gives his scale of 0 to 7, or 1 to 7. 1 is belief, and 7 is total disbelief. He says I'm a 6.9er. So in other words,
this is why I said
he can't be certain. He can't be 100% certain.
And what did he answer when he said, what if you're wrong?
Sorry?
When he was asked what you're wrong, what if you're wrong?
I don't recall.
He could answer. He was silent. Then he went, well, what if you're wrong? Well, if we're wrong, we ain't got a problem. This is Pascal's wager now, isn't it?
Oh dear.
Is that right?
Dear.
Pascal's wager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember it.
Yeah, Pascal's wager.
Pascal's wager. Yeah.
Is where you say.
Yeah, I know of it.
Yeah. So basically, to not believe in a God.
Yeah.
To believe in God.
Pascal, Blaise Pascal, French mathematician and philosopher of the 18th century. He was kind of thinking through all these arguments and said, actually, at the end of the day, it's almost like one of those little game theory grids.
Yeah.
So what are the strategies? I can either believe or not believe, and God either exists or not exists. So if you fill in the boxes, if I believe and God exists, eternal reward. If I believe and God doesn't exist, nothing really. Maybe I've wasted time going to maths and so on, but that's quite nice. You know. If I don't believe and God doesn't exist, again, 0. If I don't believe and God exists, well, depending on your God, it could be a sharp prod in the buttocks with a pitchfork before you spend 1,000 years in purgatory, or if you perhaps believe in what the Quran tells us, an eternity being born alive and flayed. So that was Blaise Pascal writing in a Catholic country where really there was only one option. Now I have two objections to this really. First of all, there are many religions in the world, so it's not kind of like it's actually multi-dimensional. So, I mean, which God? Suppose you end up believing in the wrong God. Supposing the ancient Greek or the Scandinavian cosmology was right, we all ought to be believing in Thor.
This is where reason kicks in.
Yeah, you're right. But on the other hand, all these things are possible. The other thing is, which is perhaps more profound, is that
as a woman she was going to do, she's going to bring us, so she had this victory target with a big glass suit, and then she
it's almost fraudulent. If I use my reason to come to a conclusion...
But your reason be wrong?
Yes, of course.
Do you know everything?
No, I don't.
Is there knowledge out there that could change your reasoning and understanding?
Is there knowledge? Potentially. Yeah. I could give an example. Supposing that in our research, let's take DNA for example, the geneticists prove that there is a whole chapter from the Quran encoded in our DNA without a shadow of a doubt. I don't think there would be any doubt whatsoever. I'm just producing that as a kind of example that would leave me and other agnostics and atheists saying, right, game's up.
I don't think you still.
Sorry?
You still would.
I would. Assuming the procedures were correct. I mean, sometimes these hidden messages, there's lots of statistical stuff you have to go through to get to. If the mathematicians and the statisticians say, actually, that sequence of bases can be encoded as either something from the Bible or something from the Quran or something from the Buddhist scripture or whatever. If that could be absolutely shown by very reputable people, I would change my mind.
You can still have the instruments been corrupted?
Yes, I know.
You'll come with something.
But there's a reason.
And the people did it. Were they paid to do that?
This is where reasonable comes in. I mean, there comes a point where somebody who denies all the evidence in front of them, you just think, oh well.
Do you believe people come
some
to the
sort
park?
of nutter, and
Do you believe people
just
come
leave
to
him
the
alone,
park?
really?
Do you believe people come to the park and the people who believe in the creator are deluded and crazy for believing in that? It's reasonable to hate this.
No, I think one should engage.
No,
if you find people who give the impression of being reasonable and willing to talk, the best thing, in fact, it's best to talk to people who disagree with you than people who agree with you. Otherwise, you get
but is it reasonable and unreasonable to make claims that the creator doesn't exist?
On the grounds of, first of all, the notion, the creator, well, depending on the definition of the creator,
The first cause.
whatever, it's something that's outside of our universe, whatever. Well, I'm proceeding, yeah, outside our universe. So you're trying to prove that something which we can't detect using our senses doesn't exist. I mean, it's hard enough proving. I mean, Bertrand Russell had the example of a teapot. I mean, if I claim
that's
well, it's a similar sort of thing. I can't disprove there's no teapot flying around Jupiter. But on the other hand, it's highly unlikely.
Possibility.
So it's using one's experience and one's reason.
Probability and reasoning.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like I said to my mum.
But interestingly, it comes to different conclusions. So,
No, because we both got using the same string, like I said to these guys here. We're using the string of science. We know. But when you throw in creation, the wonder within creation, and then you throw in the religious side of science, and such, and the prophets and the messengers, it's completely overlooked. Because you've got nothing in response. You can't even challenge my first string. My first string overrides those. For example, the first string is that the universe began to exist and required a cause.
Yeah, I'm not a professional philosopher, but I do read a bit. And arguments on both sides. And I read through these arguments.
I just had a, 40-50 minute conversation with regards to that.
So the syllogism, if you're referring to the Kalam cosmological argument, is debated.
No.
And we could debate it now, but as a layman, I stand back and think,
Rob, Rob comes here.
Great mate of Rob,
yeah, you're great mate. You've seen my debate with him, yeah?
It's lined up on the right-hand side of my vids to watch
it. Because
yes, I will.
What Rob conceded incorrectly, by the way. He claimed a stalemate, which I was happy with.
Yeah.
Why? Because I'm going toe-to-toe with his science. Yeah, I ain't bring no religion to the table whatsoever.
Yeah.
I just went toe to toe with science. Yeah, and he conceded a stalemate, which it wasn't stalemate, it was checkmate. Because a stalemate with neither person has another move. I had many moves left. He had no moves left. But watch that video. Yeah, watch that video. Was it Beyond the Stalemate of Cosmology? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You watched it?
I haven't watched it. I might have watched bits of it. I didn't actually watch bits of it. Yes.
Watch it.
You see, this is. I think this is.
So what I'm saying to you is this: we debated that idea, and I didn't concede. I just allowed him a stalemate.
That's generous.
Yes. Yeah. Without adding my other strings to the bow.
Yeah.
And he's right. He's got no more moves. He's stuck on that, and even that he knows isn't certain.
Yeah.
Whereas I have more things to bring to the table.
Yeah.
So for me, it's more reasonable to believe what I believe than what you believe.
A couple of points then. I think, comment on that. This might be an sort of illusion when you're talking to yourself who classifies myself as an agnostic. Therefore, part of my worldview is that there are limits to human knowledge. So there will come a point where you've got plenty of arrows left in your quiver or strings to your bow, and I'll say, I really can't go beyond that. For example, I note, for example, that in the Kalam argument, that there is perhaps quite a lot of use of logic to infer things about the real world. So pure reason.
If you watch it, I twisted the Kalam argument.
Okay,
which is why he had to concede it.
Okay,
because I didn't use the traditional view.
So for example, I heard you talking about infinity and the bits about Hilbert's Hotel and that sort of thing. They're all exercises in pure reason. They don't necessarily tell us anything about the real world. My position on that is that at the moment, the experts in this are cosmologists and physicists. Now, when I read my books on cosmology and physics, I find there's numerous theories about the history, the structure and the future of the universe.
Yeah.
So it's not hardly for me to come along, or anybody really, to come along with an argument which is based on pure logic.
But the thing with me, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
The thing with me, my belief system also supports that argument. So not only does the scientific argument, what the scientific argument is about the origination of the universe, beginning and such and such, my belief, my religious belief now, bringing that into the table now, corroborates.
Yeah.
So Islam teaches the universe had a beginning.
Right. What I was trying to say is the science, as I understand it, is unfinished business.
No, I agree.
The science is never finished.
Agreed.
But let me just pose this question. Let's say in 10, 20 years' time, the vast majority of cosmologists come together and they say there's absolutely conclusive proof that, for example, the universe is infinite, or the universe is part of a multiverse, and so on.
Right.
So a number of the things that you perhaps would reject.
Testable observable evidence.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for example, even now they're beginning to look at gravitational
Then there's two
waves.
things there. There's two things there.
But
First,
let me just finish that, because when we say testable, observable evidence, I think
you said absolute.
We're sort of talking about areas now that possibly, in principle, cannot be observed. So
no, you said absolute. How would you know it's absolute?
What they would have to have is something like such a convincing unified theory that contained within it descriptions. Yeah. So it will be predicting features or describing features of the current universe, making predictions about the current universe. Within that theory, there would also be parts of the model that describe perhaps the actual
Is it absolute
Big
what
Bang
you're saying?
prior to the Big Bang.
Absolute.
And so on. I'm just guessing that.
No. This is 20 years.
So in other words, it's like evolution.
but how can
Obviously,
it be absolute?
we cannot go back to
No, but how can it be absolute? That's what I don't
65 million years ago and watch
You
the
created
dinosaurs.
a hypothetical scenario.
Yeah.
About absolutes, absolute 100%. How could it be?
Well,
It can only be testable then, isn't it?
did I say it's absolute?
Yeah, you did. You said if 20 years time, science comes in concrete, this is it.
Well,
this is
what
how
I mean is,
I know
all
exactly
the
what you're saying.
cosmologists
Basically what
say
you're saying
this.
is if science disagrees with the Quran, that's what you're saying.
Was it? Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's still
Two things we do.
the experts.
Yeah.
If I'm claiming that is therefore absolutely correct knowledge, I may be misquoting myself. The hypothesis I was posing was that
It's a concrete.
I mean, in the same way that you wouldn't get a scientist to argue that the sun goes around the Earth.
Yeah.
So nobody.
No.
Anybody with a
How do we know
religion
the
that
sun goes
claims
around the Earth?
otherwise.
How do we know the sun goes around the Earth?
How do we know the sun goes around the Earth?
Yeah.
Only light.
Right. Evidence.
How do we know the Earth goes around the Sun?
No. How do we know? No,
Or direct observation.
Right.
Satellites,
So
that
observation.
sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So we just said. That's what I just said to you. We said something concrete with evidence.
I disagree with that. But
With,
we'll
okay.
Do you
talk about it
understand
later.
the point? So I know what you're implying. You're saying if there's a scientific fact that's 100% proven that goes against what the Quran says, then what then, isn't it? Is that what you were trying to imply?
Well, let's take this 100% proven.
No, I'm just
Now,
we're not
there are
hypothetically saying
degrees of. When we make statements about the past, let's face it,
Okay,
the whole
okay.
world could have come into existence 5 minutes
Okay.
ago, looking as if it had a past.
Let's say.
So there are degrees of certainty.
Let's use your example of the sun.
Yeah.
We know the Earth goes around the sun, yeah?
No, in the sense that there's no reasonable person, no reasonable scientist who would claim the opposite.
Right, so we know it goes round.
Yeah.
We've observed tested.
Of all the
Now, if
things
the
we know,
Quran-
that's one of the most certain.
Now, if the Quran said it didn't,
It very clearly said
it didn't,
the alternative.
right?
Yeah.
What then? That's your basic point.
You're the believer.
No.
I can't
Look,
advise
I
you
spoke.
how to reform your beliefs, can I?
No. Listen to what you're saying. I spoke about the Quran corroborating the scientific model of today. Yeah? You said, what if science in 10, 20 years' time says that the universe wasn't finite, it was infinite? But that was your implication. Your implication was this. I'm pretty sure it was this. If the Quran then would then be wrong, if the Quran saying the universe had a beginning, yet science in 20 years' time says it was infinite, then we have a conflict, isn't it? And you want to say, well, I still believe the Quran if I'm holding on to the scientific model now.
That's a question to you. How
No,
would you deal with that?
Right,
I can't advise you.
But we did establish you couldn't prove that, so I brought it back to something that we can prove, which is what? That the Earth goes around the sun. Yeah? So your implication was this, and correct me if I'm incorrect. You were implying if the Quran disagrees with some scientific fact of a certainty, yeah? What then? Yeah. Now there's two
Let's be
things.
careful about using words like certainty here. I mean, strictly speaking.
Well, it has to be certainty, isn't it? Otherwise, it's no issue for me.
We're talking about.
Then we go possibility, probability again. Yeah. Then we go back to possibility, probability.
There is consensus, isn't there, that the Earth goes around the Sun.
No, right. And if the Quran
Now, as
didn't
to whether
say
we
that-
can be philosophically certain about it.
That's correct.
Now then, we're in a slightly different territory. So let's be clear about how we're using the word certainty. There's a kind of certainty that enables to get round the real world.
Sorry, forgive me. Sorry.
Yeah.
We just go back a little bit here.
Well, we need to analyse.
No.
The word.
We need to go. No, we need to go back here. Why? Because you used the word.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go back again. I said when it comes to the scientific argument with regards to the universe having a cause and such, again dealing with your mate Rob, my mate Rob, yeah,
Our mate Rob.
he claimed a stalemate, right? Then I said, and the Quran corroborates that stance also. So I have an extra string to my bow, yeah.
Sorry, corroborates which stand?
The idea that the universe had a beginning.
Okay, yeah. So
Right.
it's making
So if you're challenging a multiversa, for
it's
example,
making a definite claim. The
Yes.
Quran. Right.
the universe had a beginning.
Yeah.
All right. Then you were the one who said in 10, 20 years' time, science discovers or confirms that the universe has always existed and it's not finite. What was your point you were making?
That's-
Because I
that's-
jumped on your point. I thought I knew what you were talking about. I'm going to let you explain it.
That's actually just one possibility,
No,
isn't
what's
it?
your point?
Okay, well,
You brought it out.
Because
I
it's a-
said something and you said that in response to it.
well, I've lost track. You know,
All right, I'll remind
I have a
you.
short memory.
All right, I'll remind you.
Tell me where we were going.
I
Yeah.
said it was
Yeah.
a stalemate with regards to multiverse and a finite, infinite universe and a finite universe. And I said the Quran corroborates. So I said I brought the extra string to my
Oh,
bow
wait a
now.
minute. I know where we came from. I think
you were
I
saying
think,
that basically it's a
I
learning
think the point
process.
is,
No, he wasn't
from
saying
my worldview, we're at a position where the authorities on the history, the shape and the future of the universe are not in agreement. That's who I'd go to, right? To get any ideas about, you know, what the universe is like in its deep past or deep future. At the moment, there are several competing theories. My hypothesis, if you like, just to expand it, is that 20, 50 or 100 years' time, there may or may not be a consensus. At which point it will be reasonable, I think, for ordinary people like us to accept or believe that as an account, a reasonable account of the way the universe is. But it could pan out in various ways. For example, in 20, 50 or 100 years' time, the cosmologists could come out and say, we're all agreed that the universe had a beginning. We have no idea where it came from. But doing, there you go. So you can reasonably argue that there must have been a conscious creator who brought it. Or they might argue that it's one of various, cyclic or infinite
I
or
don't need to
part
wait.
of a
I don't need to
multiverse.
take 20, 50 years. I don't need to wait 20, 50 years. Right now, as it stands today, what we have in
We
front
don't
of
have the scientific evidence.
what we have in front of us right now today is that
No, we don't.
what the universe is infinite or finite.
No, we don't have agreement between cosmologists. There are some models that suggest it's infinite, others that it's cyclic.
Which is more probable?
I have no idea. I mean, how can I say? This is the point where you.
So how do you argue against Stephen
Rob
Hawking?
and I would think this is a stalemate, and you seem to think you've still got
No.
arrows in
No.
your quiver.
No.
I just say
I
there are
have.
limits to our knowledge.
No.
I think we've just bumped into one.
Okay.
For me, it doesn't really matter too much.
Even if you
I
want to
would
claim
like
the
to know.
stalemate now, and you've got no more quivers left. You don't know, yeah? Fair enough.
Yeah.
You're going off a model that's not proven, no evidence for it, yeah? Me, I'm going off a model that seems to apply, according to what science says with regards to the expansion of the universe and such, that it had some kind of beginning. Whether I agree with an infinite universe, quantum vacuum or whatever is another story. Whether I believe that singularity was infinite or not.
Yeah.
That's another question. All right. The point here is this, the scientific model right now, according to, I can only go Stephen Hawking, Lawrence Krauss and all these guys, universe had a beginning. Then I bring the arrow out my quiver, now the Quran says the universe had a beginning.
Yeah.
So now I have two things. Right. You only still stuck on the one thing. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you are. You got nothing else. You got nothing else.
You seem to think
And
that
then, and when I
wait a
said
minute,
that, and
by
when I-
line.
no, this is back to where we were. 'Cause
Yeah,
when I said
yeah.
that, you then tried to imply. I'm sure this is what you're trying to imply, and you realised you were going to get stuck with it. You tried to say...
I'm not that clever to think about where I'm going.
There must have been a reason. Watch the video.
Yeah.
There must have been a reason why you tried to say in 10, 20 years' time, if science switches and says that it's infinite, and the Quran's still saying it's finite, then you got a problem. Then it's not corroborating it.
Yeah.
Because there's no other reason why you would go 10, 20 years in the future. Science changes its stance when I bring up the Quran. There's no other way. Now, here's one thing you've got to understand.
Can I explain again? I thought I did just explain that it's to bring out my sense that there is no conformity of opinion amongst the scientific community that deals with the large-scale structure of the universe.
No.
Now, I can't go any
10,
further than them. Well, it's just an example.
What does 10, 20 years in the future have to do with me mentioning the Quran?
Because the point being, forget the actual number, sometime in the future, there may or may not be consensus among scientists who study this part of science.
What's that to do with my Quran?
Well, it may or may not contradict what's in the Quran.
Okay.
It seems to me you're being too hasty in quoting Hawking and all these other people who are expressing certain features of the current state of affairs. I mean, they change their opinion. I mean, I think Hawking throughout his career has published different papers
Stephen
that say
Hawking
different
think
things.
the universe is finite?
Well, I remember reading...
Do you believe the universe is infinite? Or you don't know?
Finish?
He's going to say don't know.
I remember reading Brief History of Time, and there's an image that's stuck in my mind from that. I know this is going back 20, 25 years, but I think he tried to explain in that the notion of beginning and ending is pretty meaningless when it comes to the universe. He tried to use an analogy, which I don't think is brilliant, but the idea of a sphere. So what is more north than north? So in other words, a sphere is... So think about a sphere, or in n dimensions you can have similar objects to spheres. It has no boundary. So that's in common with being infinite. There is no boundary, if you like, to an infinite series. But a sphere is finite. So in the physics of cosmology in the universe, one of the models is that the universe could be finite but unbounded. Now we're using English to describe concepts that, quite honestly, you need several years of hard mathematics to really get your head round, and I'm not even sure then that you can describe back to the general public what's going on. So we're describing n-dimensional spaces.
It's not unreasonable for me to agree with Hawkins, is it?
Well, that's an interesting question. Do you really know what he's saying? I mean, do you understand the maths?
All I need, if he's saying the universe had a beginning.
He was misquoted. I think one of his quotes where he did mention God, and it turns out that he's been terribly misunderstood about that.
That wasn't the question.
No, I'm just saying that...
Does he say the universe had a beginning?
I really don't know.
Okay. If you don't know, then there's no point bringing him up.
That wouldn't be scientific because you couldn't observe that.
What's that? Well, you can observe that because you can look at the universe expanding. Of course you can.
Wait a minute.
Well, of course you can.
You see it expanding, but it may contract and expand like a...
No, if it's
I
expanding...
mean, this is out of bounds as far as I'm concerned. We're not cosmologists.
You need to watch the video.
So you're quoting a...
Watch the video, EFDawah channel.
I do.
You're quoting a current cosmologist.
I quote Lawrence Krauss as well. I quoted Hubble, I
You can
quoted
line
Einstein.
them all up and so on, and they might all be wrong for all.
Well, if you've got reasons to say they're wrong, I don't mind.
I haven't.
So
I'm not a cosmologist.
Right. See,
But I worry for your position.
my position.
Yes, I worry for you.
Okay.
That there'll become a huge
I'll tell you why you don't need to.
There'll become a huge
I'll tell you why
disappointment if they all, in some years' time, forget how, I'm not going to predict how many, they all say, oh God, we were all wrong when we said that the universe
I love it when they say, oh God. Okay, here's
as a matter of speech.
Here's something you need to understand. And I think all you atheists need to understand.
I'm not an atheist, one.
I don't need science to corroborate what I believe.
Well, that's fair enough. It's a belief.
No,
You're potentially fallible.
No.
So when you say believe, you're agreeing that you could be wrong.
I'm saying, no, that's not what belief means.
Yes, it is.
No.
I mentioned that before. You didn't disagree when I said if I believe that a number 10 bus will be along in 5 minutes.
No.
I could be wrong. I'll say I could be wrong.
And then I brought my example of climbing Mount Everest. Yeah. All right. Convinced. I'm convinced.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't need science to convince me any further as to what
You're now
I'm convinced
describing
by.
your psychological state.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
I'm not.
Yes, you are.
Why am I?
You are.
That's the way you're using the word convinced.
I mean, no, the word believe, convince, accept, trust,
Yeah.
right. Reason. Why am I convinced?
It doesn't necessarily apply to the state of affairs in the real
Well, if
world.
I say I'm convinced by something, you should say, what are you convinced by?
Well, throughout history,
I don't need science to see, science, all science can do, yeah? I don't need science to corroborate what I believe, just as when I deal with a Christian.
Yeah.
I don't need the Bible to corroborate Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I don't need the
you
Bible.
don't need.
No.
Okay, so you
And
don't need
now what I would
empirical
do,
evidence.
no. It's not empirical what you just said. None of it's empirical. Right? So I don't need science to corroborate what I say. I don't need it. Alhamdulillah. Now, if science challenged, so let's say for example, go back to what I was trying to say earlier. Let's just say science has determined that the Earth orbits the sun.
Yeah.
And then the Quran says the sun orbits the Earth.
Yeah.
Or the Earth is static. Then I have a problem.
Or it's flat.
Then I have a problem. So then I have to
Yeah.
question, have I misunderstood what the Quran's saying?
Okay.
Or is the Quran wrong?
Yeah.
Or is it right?
But I don't need to find things in the Quran to match science. Science has to match the Quran.
Oh, right, okay.
That's the point. When we Muslims, we use the Quran, we don't say, oh, the Quran talks about this and that and it's a science book. No,
Yeah.
not at all. Yeah? We don't need that. The Quran is a book of signs, not science.
Signs?
Signs, yes. Indications. This is why the Quran says...
Sign. I often wonder about the definition of what a sign is in this context.
Okay, well, the Quran tells you. Have you not travelled the earth? Have you not contemplated? Have you not reflected? Did you create yourself? The Quran challenges all of these things. Have you read the Quran?
Bits of it.
That wasn't the question. Why have you not read the Quran?
It's just very
You want
hard going.
evidence, you crave evidence, you want proof.
Yeah.
Just read it.
Yeah. Okay. There's the challenge for 2017. Try and get beyond page 20.
Yes. And remember first thing about the Quran. Most of the initial part is referring to the children of Israel and such, then speaking about Jesus and such.
Yeah.
So if you're not really religious minded in that sense, you might get a little bit laborious in the stories there. But then mashallah, when you get further on, then you'll start feeling it. Yeah, because this is what we believe, what I'm convinced by, is this uncaused cause, which I believe has to be conscious to cause the universe, has sent guidance to the ones he created, and it just happens to be that the guidance that we're taught as Muslims and what we follow in our daily lives as Muslims is to our benefit. Now it just seems amazing for me, 1400 years ago someone put a book together and it just seems to fit man like a glove. Like a glove. That if you follow its teachings, if you follow its guidance, you'll have peace and serenity within your life. Forget heaven and hellfire and all that. We're just talking about living in this jungle.
Actually, here's a question.
Over to this young man here.
Okay.
Now that we've got a stalemate
Think about it in this particular example. If we're going
on the camera.
well, I might try to change the topic a slight bit. It's on the topic of heaven and hell. But here's a question for
Today
you.
we're going to talk about
Go on.
something that happened over a week ago.
Oh crap! No.
Up in Glasgow.
Okay.
What do you believe first before you start?
Oh, I don't really have any particular beliefs, but if I did
You
have,
have to believe something.
well, if I had a favourite religion, it'd be Shintoism.
No, I didn't ask you your religious. I said what's your belief?
What do you mean?
Worldview.
There was some
Oh.
problem.